Hi, Dialect family. Before we get into delta neutral hedging and protecting positions and changing and losing positions into winning positions, I'm sorry if you hear background noise. It's my English bulldogs being crazy. You got to know the Greeks. You got to know them, not just know what they do, but how to understand them. So, first thing we're going to talk about is the delta. The delta is almost the most important one because we know it's the first derivative of the option price. Now, most people don't know the basics of what the delta does, but do you really know the function? The first derivative, meaning things made from something else, delta being the change in or the change of an option as it changes off the strike price. Delta tells us how much an option price will change with the movement in the underlying stock price at a dollar. Delta has three definitions: price change, percentage change, and hedge ratio. All of these are equally important, none ahead of the other. So the movement in the stock price definition of the stock price changes. Delta describes the percentage the option price moves with a stock price movement. So for example, a 40 delta option will move 40% of what the stock just moved. That is the percent change. Delta is also defined as the second thing is delta is also defined as a probability chance. A 50% delta option has 50% chance of finishing in the money. A 30% delta option has a 30% chance of finishing in the money, but a 70% chance of finishing expiring out of the money. Delta as a probability change describes the chance in terms of percentage of an option finishing in the money versus out of the money. And then lastly, delta's last definition is the hedge ratio. Remember, we talked about options being the perfect hedge. In any situation, we could sell a number of deltas through options to perfectly hedge the delta risk of our stock. A quick example of this would be if we were long 800 shares of stocks or 800 delta calls for options, for example. As each share of stock is equal to 1 delta, and we wanted to hedge our position, we could buy some puts to hedge that position. The question is how many puts? The answer is in delta definition of hedge ratio. Hedge ratio tells us how many puts we need to buy to become delta neutral. Now, don't get this confused. 1 share equals 1 delta. Thus, one option contract has a maximum of 100 delta. From the 800 shares of stocks, we will look at, for instance, a 40 delta put. The 800 long delta position from the stock dividend divided by 40 delta of the puts will equal 20. That is how we know we need to buy 20. So let's go over that again. If we have 800 shares or 8 option contracts long, and we were buying a 40 delta put to hedge that position, we would divide 800 by 40, which will give us 20. So we know we have to buy 20 puts at that 40 delta. And now we know that we are short 800 deltas. So we're pretty much delta neutral. We are delta neutral because those puts provided full downside protection, protecting your position down to 0. We can also hedge with calls, right? Calls provide only a limited downside, not protection, limited to the amount of money you receive from the sales of the calls. So back to our example, if we're long 800 shares of stocks and we were looking at a 50 delta call, we would sell 16 of them. Why? Because the 50 delta of the call multiplied by 16 will give us short 800 delta. The short 800 total delta from the 16 calls we sold will perfectly hedge the long 80 deltas from our 800 share stock position. Hopefully this makes sense. Now remember, it works the other ways too. If we bought 10 50 delta calls, we would have acquired 500 long deltas. In order to delta hedge our position, we would sell 500 shares of stocks. Remember, 1 share of stock equals 1 delta. Selling 500 shares of that stock will perfectly hedge our long 500 delta position from the calls we purchased. I'm going to go through and teach you guys all kinds of stuff on this, but lastly, I'll leave you with this. Like the other day, I posted a screenshot of how you can completely cancel out all of the Greeks, and your option position will do a 1-for-1 ratio, just like it was one share of stock. And you do this by buying, let's say we bought a long 50 call at the money, we know, because 50 is at the money. If we sold the corresponding 50 put, same date, same expiration date, same strike price, that would completely give us a 0 delta, a 0 gamma, a 0 theta, which we know three things that move an option price is stock price movement of the underlying option, and time and volatility. So hopefully this class helps clear some pictures, because you got to understand this class before we can move on.